There we are. Caught me in the act. Well, welcome.
Saw that. Yeah.
I got my spread out here. I normally don't show this in the studio, but if we call it a studio, but our little podcast room that we got, which is cool. But I'm spread out. This is my normal operating is spread out, and got a little bit of technology here. Got the phone. Need to make sure it's all.
You don't have the CSG on the monitor behind you. What's going on? We usually the Zion Solutions Group logo on the monitor behind you.
Hold on. I'm just all out of sorts today, but I'm going to do that. And while I'm doing that, if anybody's listening to this, because you don't want to hear silence, is welcome to the latest episode of the TZE Podcast. We're excited to have you here. You can, if I can multitask, you can find us. I probably just went away from the microphone. You can find us out on YouTube if you want to watch us on video. You can find us on Spotify, Deezer, Apple Podcast. You can find us at the TZSG.com, which is our webpage, and you can go into resources and you can find this. If you're not a subscriber, go out and subscribe it. We try to drop one of these every 1 to 2 weeks. At some point, we're going to get our podcast game together, and I'm going to do an intro, and Jordan and I'll do an intro to where this is not just coming off the cuff every week. But we're excited to be here. TZE episode something. I don't even know how many episodes we've done, but really enjoying it. I got my brother on here, Jordan Frank, who's done it. Our producer's in the background, Jacob, who's going to get on and tell us we shouldn't have to be told to wrap up today, because what we're talking about today is the art of negotiation. And we're going to just share it from a perspective of, I don't know that it's great advice. I don't know that I would recommend that you use it, but we're perspective of 25 plus years for me in the industry of negotiating and just negotiating in life. And then Jordan's 10, 15 years in the industry, and he's more in the thick of it of negotiating. And it comes in phases. There's a long sales cycle in the business that we're in, systems integration, but we're going to kind of do this just more general. We're going to try to paint a picture of just some directional skills. And I think what started this idea or concept is I've been looking for a new vehicle for quite a while. I don't like negotiation. I don't like negotiation of a new car and a new vehicle. So I've got a couple other businesses that I do with my brothers and on the side. And one of them's a construction business, and we needed a new work truck, and work trucks are quite expensive, and we're just starting this business out. And so I needed a good diesel work truck, and I've been looking for quite a while, and I finally finished and found the work truck, and I had to go negotiate it on Saturday. And I was telling Jordan and Jacob of how that went, which is probably not the best person to give advice on how to buy a vehicle, because I get frustrated with the back and forth, because some people enjoy it. I don't. I just want, what's the price? What's my fair price? I want to write you a check and I'll be done. So I'll intro with that. Now, Jordan, in your past life, you worked at CarMax, and you did buying, I know, but did you ever have the opportunity, I guess, previous to the systems integration side, did you do any negotiation on the car, or what's your style of going into a car dealership?
Well, first, let me start with, see if I can figure this out. Give me 1 second.
I'm not the only one that wasn't prepared today, then, evidently.
No. I'm going to show you something here. So I wanted to show, here's a truck that Jimmy ended up with his art of negotiation right here. So this is he set out to get a 2022 work truck, dually, diesel, flatbed, and this is what we ended up with. So when Jimmy says don't take too much from him today, now you know why. But no. Anyways,
they do say, let me read this. It's a negotiation is a strategic discussion that resolves an issue in a way that both parties find acceptable. So I needed a truck. Right. They needed to sell that old truck right there. We both found a way that made it resolved an issue. I don't have to look for a truck anymore.
That's right. Yeah. No, I started my career part-time. I was in college at a UK. And was looking for something to create some side money. They were opening up a CarMax near me down in Lexington. So I was part of the grand opening team. I opened up as a part-time used car salesman, which typically is people hear that and they run the other direction. They can't stand it. They don't want to talk to them. I would be embarrassed. People would be like, it's like talking to a used car salesman. Like, well, been there, done that.
What do you do for a living? I'm a
Right.
used car
I sell
salesman.
used cars. Now, what I will say, the good news about CarMax is they don't negotiate. Their
Yeah.
price is their price. Didn't
Sticker.
stop people from trying to negotiate. And
Yeah.
then I'd have to negotiate with them on why we don't negotiate. But that's where I started. And then I transitioned to buying the vehicles when I went to a full-time position, which was much more enjoyable. But there's a lot of negotiation in buying as well, because while we wouldn't negotiate in the store for trade-ins, 3 or 4 days a week, I'd be at an auto auction. And when you go to an auto auction, you got people from all walks of life, all different types of vehicles, anywhere from a brand new vehicle to a 10-year-old vehicle, and that's all you're doing, and you're negotiating. And what it really taught me, because CarMax, I've said this before in the podcast, but CarMax is a wonderful company. They really do have great vehicles. They stand behind it, great warranty items. It's a good overall company. I learned a ton from it, not only personally, but from a business standpoint, building relationships. But for me, when it comes to negotiating, you got to find that common element, right? What is it, to your point earlier? What are you after? Is it a car? Is it a new system? Is it software? Whatever it is. And negotiating doesn't always mean it's down to the price. In my experience, a lot of what I do when I'm thinking about negotiating, I don't really look at anything that I do in a day to day as a negotiation where I'm going back and forth on price or whatever else. But what I will do is really two things. One is when looking at a new system, and we've talked through some items, and we have some thoughts on, hey, you know what, it'd be nice if we had accumulation in this area versus transportation, or it'd be nice if we had a couple extra robots versus what was originally proposed. When those things come up, it's like, okay, well, let's talk about this. What is best for the overall solution? What is best for the customer? What is best for us? What is best for our team? What can we do to create a memorable experience? It's what we strive to do. That's our vision, right? And the second piece is, inevitably, we're going to have misses or delays at times during the life cycle of a project. And I think Jimmy's very good at this, and I've learned from him, really, is looking to understand what was committed, what was communicated, and what is the right thing to do, right? Sometimes that means that we got to take cost. Sometimes it means we got to share in cost, right? But when we talk about negotiation, I think that's kind of my focus, right? Is more around the experience, what's being delivered, finding the common factor. What does success look like? Price may or may not be a factor, right? I don't know, Jimmy, do you agree?
No, I 100% agree. I would not consider what to some extent everything in life is a negotiation, but I think it's a conversation, or you could call the word compromise in place. But
Yep.
I think you nailed some stuff. And so when we obviously don't prepare for this, we're going to come in, but I'm still a list guy. So like 2 minutes before we're doing it, I'm looking at how would I define negotiation? And I looked up, I'm an engineer, so that people just know that about me. And when I research stuff, I look up, like, you start with basic stuff of what's the definition of negotiation? Well, we said it. It's two parties trying to get to some level of resolution. Where you land, what you mean. It could be price, it could be where we go to dinner at night, it could be, do we buy this house? Do we buy that house? Do I get this car? Do I work with you? Do I not work with you? So to me, it's more of, it's a common language. It's a common way that you find to what we speak about a lot is, how do you get to the middle with people? And I think all I would add to this is just, I don't know it's advice as much as just talking. And I'm sure what I'd love to do is some people that listen to this, maybe when we post it, is what do you do? What are your best practices? How would you share your version of negotiation? And there's a bunch out there. There's the 5 Ps, there's the 4 Cs. Everybody wants a list, but at the end of the day, what are some, you said it, what are some things that are good? And I think you nailed it. So I'm gonna hit a list of it, and then we'll just see where the conversation goes. But in our line of business, a big portion of negotiation is one, you've got to know what your goals are and what is the outcome you're desiring. Is your outcome price? Some people want to end there. Is your outcome a successful project? Everybody wants that, but it sometimes that's more important than others. Is your outcome, you're trying something new? Is what are your goals? So I think you got to identify what are the goals. You obviously need to be a strong communicator. You have to have the ability to articulate your thoughts and your points and be able to share those. You need to remain professional. You obviously want to have some relationships. You can't go in and just expect to ask somebody for a compromise or a negotiation if you've done no work and no relationship. You've got to understand, if you got a strong relationship, and that approach and how you handle it's different. How you're going to negotiate with Summer is going to be a lot different than how you're going to negotiate with a stranger you meet for the first time.
Sure.
Good or bad, it's like, man, they know all your tricks if you're trying to negotiate, so you might as well just come clean. I think another part is like you said, is I think you got to know strengths and weaknesses. Some people are really strong at negotiating at the front end, and they fall apart right before it closes. Some people are really kind of, they lay low until, man, they live for that last 5 to 10% of the close on it. And so you got to know your strengths and weaknesses. Here's my phone. It's a good thing I turned the thing off, or the ring off. It would have blared. You got to have some level of confidence. I think confidence is an important factor. You can't be afraid to make mistakes or do something. I don't think anything in life is something you can't come back from if you're doing and you're trying to figure something out. And that comes back to some of our core values, right? To me, negotiation, I've always tried. That's probably why I'm not a good negotiator. It's never been about price to me. I'm not driven by the money. I just don't like it. I don't like negotiating and haggling over cars. My version of value and other people's value. I'm not after the ultimate dollar and profit. It's just, I'm more focused on people and customers and outcomes. And that's where I tend to lead. But be authentic, be transparent, have the ability to meet in the middle. Two other things that I would say, and I'm just rattling off a whole bunch here, Jordan, but you can pick up is if I had two concrete pieces of advice, and I shared this in a video post a couple weeks or maybe a month ago, I don't remember, but if there's one thing you're not willing to compromise on, you better know it going into it, and you don't. And then everything else, it kind of dovetails into my other point, is you got to give the other party that you're negotiating with some wins. It can't be all about you. You got to meet in the middle. So be prepared, know your strengths and weaknesses. You got to be able to communicate, be authentic, be transparent, be yourself. It's easy. You don't have to be anybody else when you're in whatever form of negotiation you're at, but know what you're not willing to compromise on, and be willing to meet in the middle on the other items and give the other party some wins. I don't know. Maybe there's something in there. It's good.
No, I think I think what we're getting to, and we were kind of talking about this pre-show, is just the art of negotiation, and I think you and I were kind of talking about what does negotiate mean, and do we do a lot of negotiation? And I'm coming to this right now just through our conversation, is if we go back to your truck, right? You had no desire to go in and bounce back and forth with price. Your value was saying, here's what I'm willing to pay. Are you willing to accept it? So otherwise known as transparency, right? You're not trying to hide something. You're not trying to start high, have him come back low, then go somewhere else. There's just no time for that, right? So you mentioned as two of your points, authenticity and transparency. I mentioned during CarMax that there is no negotiation. What you see is what you get. And I think what you'll find with us is that we all live by that. We're authentic, we're transparent, and we want to tell you what we know. So when we're looking at anything we do in life, whether it be business or personal, none of us enjoys the back and forth negotiation trying to get a deal out of things. I know plenty of people that they have to get a deal, and that's important to them, and they thrive on that, and that's their passion. We're less focused on getting a deal and more focused on spending our time wisely and building those relationships through trust, authenticity, and transparency. So when we're looking at developing a system, when we're looking at sizing in, maybe there's a change order on a project because there was truly a change to scope. We're not trying to go back and dump in a bunch of profit and dump a margin and a bunch of margin thinking, well, hey, they're going to come back. We're going to have to reduce our price. Let's start up here. So we come back to why? What's the point in that? What happens if they say, okay, now they're overpaying for a service, and that's not who we are, right? We just want to lay it out there on the table. We want to have friendly conversations. We don't look at our projects or our sales as transactions, right? They're not a one and done. So we just feel like, I mean, I'm speaking for you a little bit here, Jimmy, because I think I'm reading this off of you, is when it comes to negotiation, I think the art that we have is eliminating it. We don't want to negotiate back and forth. I'm not saying that, but I think there's a big difference between negotiating and being flexible, right? And I think we are a very flexible company and we're willing to adapt not whatever we need to, but what we need to in order to have a successful go live, a successful project, a successful new logo. That doesn't mean that we're going to come in and drop our price down to the point that we can't pay our teammates. So I think that comes first for us, is just laying it out on the table, seeing where it goes, being flexible, being fluid, being able to adjust, but not spending 6 weeks going back and forth on negotiating down price. That's just not the right fit for us. We're not the right fit for that.
No. And I think that we talk a lot about how do you do things differently. And I think when we started Zion and who we want to be, and you got your vision, right? A memorable experience to us is you don't feel like you had to go through that a lot in this industry, and it's changing. I understand that, but there's a lot of negotiation that in the way that it happens that goes on, to where you start high, we come down, you ultimately go through the used car buying experience, and it's just as far away from what I want to do and what I think
Unless it
what
was
we
me.
want to do.
Unless it was me. Unless when I was the used car salesman, then it was an okay experience.
There,
I
there
was
you go.
I've been
We
delivering
don't want
memorable
that
experience
experience.
since 2013, Jimmy. It's
Yeah.
all good, right?
You get my point. So most of
Yeah.
life is you go to the grocery store, you got a price on a gallon of milk, you get the gallon of milk. You don't go up to the cashier and you're like, I want to pay $1.50 for this. There's a whole lot of other things in life where that comes in, and we are a business that we've got to go earn business and sell. And I think Chuck says this really well, and it's hard for a lot of people to have this inherent trust. I think I'm going to use the words trust and faith. And Chuck says that a lot. He says at some point you've got to have trust and faith. And that's what we ask, and what we desire to build those partnerships and those relationships with customers and our partners, to where there's unspoken trust and faith, is that you're going to do the right thing. You are who you say you are. When you look somebody in the eye, and you don't need a piece of paper to tell you how to do the right thing. And I think we live that creed of trust and faith. And we say a lot when you're at the table and you're trying to do it, and maybe we get in a new customer, it hadn't worked for us. It's the first time they've done it or worked with us, is we tell them a lot. Again, it's Chuck. I've learned from him watching. He's done it his whole career. I'm not the best at communicating. He's better at putting words and thoughts into words than I am. But I'm really good at using his material. They're just words, right? At the end of the day, anybody that's listening to this that doesn't know Jordan or Jimmy or Zion. They're just words, but let the action speak for it. And I think what you would find is anybody that's dealt with us consistently, and we've been in the industry 95 plus years of experience now, 25 for me, 30 plus, 35 for Chuck. Drew's got 20. You got 10 to 15, right? I think you would say is, yep, that was the experience I've got. So that comes full circle back to why to us, a memorable experience is you got to unpack that whole word and statement a lot. But that's what we strive to do. It comes to trust. It comes back to trust and relationships.
Yeah, it does. And I think, there's two more points that I'd like to make. One area that we do, I guess, negotiate is with our business partners. And when we work with our business partners and we're setting up new agreements, we want to make sure we're both set up for success, right? We want our partners to make profit so that they can reinvest into the company and continue to deliver a superior product. But we also want to be positioned that we can go out and represent their product at a fair and reasonable price, and help them grow within the industry, grow within the North American market. So one area we do find ourselves negotiating is in that initial setup, but we do it with a common goal, which is what we talked about earlier, find that common ground of representing the product and getting it saturated into the market, right? The second point that I wanted to make
I think that's a
is,
good point. Can you
yeah,
keep your second? I think it's a good
yeah, go
point.
ahead.
Anybody it's like we're not just whatever it is and just take it in. Like
Right.
you still have to be competitive. I think it's
Yes,
just a matter of we put our best foot forward. We expect our partners to put their best foot forward so that we're adding what we feel is value and fair and reasonable profits because you got a business to run. We've got business expenses just like the companies we work for. And we don't put it out there with the intention of we're going to sandbag it and add cost to it and then expect a negotiation to come back and then give away give away perceived value or take advantage of, well, they didn't question it. Our abilities to go in with the best price, the best value the first time, that's who we are. I
that's
think I
right.
think
Yep,
that's a good way to say it. It's not that we're just whatever. I mean, we expect our customers. We know we have to be competitive to compete and win, but we don't go in. Others do, but that we don't play the game. I would call it. We don't go in with that game and that mindset.
that's right. And I think we've got enough experience to understand what a fair price or fair market value is, which allows us to really be committed to our partners, where we don't have to bid them out every single project. That's not good for them. It's not good for us. It's not good for anyone, right? So back to that trust and faith is the reason we put so much effort into our partnerships. Is not only because we want to make sure we're always on top of new releases and educating ourselves and being experts in that area, um, but also so that we can go in, we can be quick to respond, and we know that when we get a price from one of our business partners, it's a fair and reasonable price, and it's not something where they're trying to price gouge us or and have us negotiate. It's just not who we are. But to your point, we do our due diligence to make sure that we
Yeah,
can be competitive. We will be competitive. Does not mean low cost,
that's
right? But
right.
it does mean that we can be competitive. And I think
And you
the
don't miss
value.
things. You
That's
don't
right.
miss, right, when you're
That's right.
working a lot of RFP exercises and all that we go through or different scope if you're working a lot. We don't like to come back and have to do a lot of change control and change orders. We'd
No, that's
rather it
right.
be
That's
right. And
exactly
so
right.
when you work with the same people or you work with the same integrator, they understand there's so many details to bring them on these systems to life. So many details. And you get used to this is how they do all their other facilities.
That's
And
right.
so
Yep.
it's an advantage, but it also could be a disadvantage in terms of cost. Of you may get a price, but it's kind of like buying a car, right? You don't know what options you would blind if you blindly bought on price and you wanted certain options and you didn't know those options were clearly defined, they weren't on the sticker, whatever. You didn't do the research, then you'd buy a car and you may not have the options you want on it,
Yep.
and that
We're
happens
we're
a lot in the industry.
we're starting to get pretty good at this, because that's a great segue. Which, side point segue, if you don't know how it's spelled, it's
It's
worth
awful.
looking up because it's
It's,
terrible. Like
it's
it's
terrible.
just, it looks ridiculous. But
I
anyways,
called it a
I
Sagoo. Maybe Kathy can
well,
get on. I saw it for
I
the
think
first.
that's
I can't
correct.
pronounce anything anyway. I make fun of myself and I'm cool with it, but it's
Yeah, I
it's a
mean, I
terrible
think
spelling.
Segway should be like the scooter Segway,
Yes, have a
Segway,
W in
but it's
there
actually
somewhere and a
spelled
Y.
Segue. That's
Yeah,
Segway. Who knew? But just that's a little education. It's your free advice for the day. But I think what my second point, Jimmy, you just hit on, was going to be, we are a service based business, not a product based business, which means that we can create solutions tailored to a certain budget. So when you talk about price, you talk about value, you talk about options on that car that you're purchasing. What we have found is when you have trust within an integrator, and I'm not saying it's every now and then you don't, it's okay to get a multiple bid, just make sure everything's still reasonable. We don't know everything. We think we're really good at what we do, but it's always, it's going to happen in life where you're required to get a secondary bid or a third bid, whatever it is. But what we have found is, through relationships that we have built with our customers, is we can really start to understand what they need to have, what they like to have, and what they don't need. It lets us understand what level of automation they desire. Do they want more manual? Do they have certain areas they want to automate? Whatever it may be, we really start to get a good understanding of what that customer needs, what that customer wants. That allows us to bring to life a tailored solution specific to that customer's budget and appetite for automation, productivities, efficiencies, throughputs, whatever it may be. So the reason we don't negotiate on price a whole lot is, in a way, we do, but we do it through the solution that we bring to life. So I know that if customer A, if they're a what you would call a brand customer, meaning that they are a retailer, they're going to have the facility for 20 years, their appetite to invest in a higher cost solution that's more automated, alleviating labor, is more likely than maybe a third party logistics company who has a 5-year contractual commitment. So, what I'm getting at is we're really good at working with customers on the front end to understand what they want. We're going to recommend what we think they need, and we come to commonality around what's the right level of automation, what's the right level of manual processes to result in the right price. If that price comes in, it's a little too high, a little too low, what we can work with that customer on is creative ways to either add functionality or remove functionality without affecting the overall solution. So I think that's why we don't see a lot of negotiation, Jim, of hey, I'm at 10 million, you're at 9 million, let's meet at 9.5. It's because we're really good at understanding what's needed up front and then tailoring the solution to that, expectation.
Right. Identify those goals up front. Yeah.
That's right.
I
So it
think we
doesn't do
did
you
it.
any
I,
good.
I don't. I don't know that we might have to rename. I liked how you said we'll have to think of some creative way to do this. This is really less about the art of negotiation, and it's really I don't know what you'd fill in the blank with. It's really the art of relationship, or the art of influence, or the art of delivering a memorable experience. I don't know what
Right.
you'd say, but I don't. I'm kind of like you when negotiation doesn't feel like the right word for the way that we try to do Zion business. But it is a negotiation. Everything in life at some perspective is a negotiation. And I got a couple books I've read. Maybe you think there's a better way to name it. Is there something better than the art of negotiation? Then I'll ring off a couple books that maybe can help somebody that's looking for it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think we did speak a lot about negotiating, and I think that what we came to the conclusion on is it's a necessary, I'm going to use this word, evil in the world of business, right? You've got to run a business. As much as we've built our company on culture, we care about our people deeply, and that's who we want to focus on, but you still have to run a profitable, successful, sustainable business. And there's certain things you need to do in business to hit those three goals, right? And negotiating can be one of those, but not in the form of back and forth on price, which is where I would guess that if you did a poll of what does negotiating mean to you, most people are going to say price. I think what we find is that our negotiation is more about the value that we bring versus the
Yeah.
price that we can provide. So I don't know. I mean, I think we spoke about it a lot, and I said earlier on, we try to eliminate negotiation by understanding what those goals are up front. But it might be a nice little catchy title. If people are still listening
Well,
right now, they can give us some
I
ideas.
think you go in, if you recap it, you go in with the mindset that you if there is something you're unwilling, that could be fill in the blank, something you're unwilling to compromise, you've got to know what position you're walking into it with. There's certain things that from a business perspective, we won't compromise on. And if that means we don't have a deal, we don't have a deal. And I think you've got to know those
Up
when
front.
you got to
Right.
know them up front. You can't walk into it and try to figure it out in the middle of it. You've got to know what those are. And I think we do a nice job of that. There's certain customers we're not the right fit for. It doesn't make them good or bad customers. It's just we're not the right fit for them. And there's certain customers that don't feel like we're the right fit, and that's okay. But you've got to you can call them values, you can call them whatever, but there's certain things that you're not willing to compromise on. You got to understand that. And then the rest of it is if you're going to negotiate, be yourself about it. Be transparent about it. Do it for the right reasons. That's why we have a vision and a mission statement and who we are, is because we ultimately know what we're trying to do it for. And I think if you find yourself only doing it for dollars and cents, you might have success. A lot of people have had success that way. That's not who I am. It's not who Zion is. It's not about that. There's a bigger purpose in life. Then it is where I was going with that is know where you're willing to meet in the middle. So there's two things out of this, whatever we call it, art of negotiation or compromise or influence or relationship. It's if you've got something that you got to stand for and understand what that one thing is you're not willing to compromise on, or multiple things if it's multiple, and meet in the middle. Be the partner, be the spouse, be the brother, be the friend, be the business partner, whatever. Meet in the middle on it. And if you're looking for some books, or some books that there's one book that I always meant when I'm mentoring someone or sharing with a young professional or just anybody in general that's looking to get in, and it's really more tailored to my journey as an engineer, is when I started my career, I was very black and white. I should say that I had a lot of confidence in my solutions. And if any of my old UPS people are on here, or anybody that knew me maybe 20 years ago, they would say this is I knew my solution was right, or I had confidence that it was right. And my approach would be going in and telling somebody why it was right and here's what it is. And I didn't have a good means of influencing people. And whether I liked it or disliked it, I had a lot of trouble my first few years of professional of just getting my personality was stronger and more abrasive. And I read a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I read it from the perspective not to manipulate them, but it kind of got into the human psyche of, it's John Carnegie, I think, who wrote it. Somebody can fact check me on that. But it made me understand that it doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter if you got the right solution as an engineer, that you can show it, you can have the best presentation. At the end of the day, you still have another human you're trying to work with, and you're trying to influence them to understand. And once I read that book and I changed my approach, I had a whole lot more success. I spent time going and meeting my operators, not just when I needed something from them or when I needed to tell them to change and do something different. I spent time, I'd go out to lunch. I asked about their family. I genuinely wanted to know, and I would remember, I'd find what they're interested in. And it's just a really good book. So How to Win Friends and Influence People. And then if you want the complete opposite of that, I've listened to a book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, I think is who wrote it. And it's like a hardcore. He was a interrogator, I think black ops type interrogator or something military. I may be getting this wrong, that he did real life or death type negotiation. And he tells you what he did and some techniques that he used to negotiate. And that's probably a different perspective if you want a whole other perspective on it. But a couple books, How to Win Friends and Influence People and Never Split the Difference, are maybe a couple books we can credit out here and share with people if you're looking on how you get better at this.
There you go.
You got any books you've read,
Awesome.
or did you just was the used car salesman training program at CarMax what got you in?
Pretty solid.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good. I do read a lot of books, but I don't read much business books. I do a lot of what I do is I'll read a fiction book, then I go to a nonfiction book, but it's usually about something like I read a lot about computers. I got into a Python coding phase where I was learning how to do Python. And then I read a lot of just fiction books too, but find it harder and harder.
For those that don't know Jimmy, let me tell you, so those that don't know Jordan, he's as bad as me he got into this Python book. And a couple months ago, he called me and he said, man, this weekend I really opened up Chat GPT and he opened AI and he just went down a full bore rabbit Alice in Wonderland hole and spent the whole weekend, spent several hours, just
several weeks.
I did everything about it.
I got big into artificial intelligence and machine learning and how it all works, and Chat GPT was part of that. I like educating myself, so I will read a lot of books that's education on different areas, and I'll go real hard for a little bit, and then I'll move on to the next.
Hadn't heard a word about it for 2 months, but I did
that
next week.
In the
That's
past.
Jordan. He's in it.
That's
He's
right.
got it. He goes a mile deep, and then it's on to something new. I'm the same way, but it's good. Well, I enjoyed it. This wraps up. If you haven't subscribed, you can find us at YouTube. You can find us at Spotify. You can find us at Apple. Go out and subscribe. We drop this. We post it on LinkedIn. If you want to watch the video version, I think YouTube's the only one that has a video version. The rest of them are audio. And thanks for spending a few moments with us, and go out there.
I think we ought to do a little giveaway. This is episode 10. 10, double digits. We
Yep.
gotta do a little
I
giveaway.
quit saying episodes because we're moving stuff
this is
around.
gonna be
but-
episode 10. So you gotta
Okay.
make sure it's
That's
episode
okay.
10. And we're gonna do a little sock giveaway. So those of you
Oh,
that do
yeah.
subscribe, we'll give away some Zion Solutions Group socks. So
Let's
that'll
do
be
Maybe we can
what
cut a
we do with
promo.
LinkedIn.
So when we do it on
Yeah.
LinkedIn, so we're
Yep.
doing the art of negotiation. I think we landed on that episode. If you'll go out and subscribe or listen, or I'll even say if you'll comment on this when we post it on LinkedIn, we've got a really cool pair of socks that'll be heading your way. So what's your favorite tips on the art of negotiation? And go in and subscribe and let us know you did it. And what do you get? You get a free pair of some cool Zion logo socks.
That's right.
I like that.
Awesome. Yeah.
Maybe Lauren and Jacob can do something with that. So thanks
There
for
you go.
another episode. We'll catch you next time.
Sounds good.